Sri Anil Khatanji, Senior Vice President, PSD, Mr. Ashish Mohan Bik, Chairman, Road, Ports and Other Infrastructure Committee, my distinguished senior colleague, Mr. Anil Sood, distinguished members, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning. Good morning.
See, we are going to discuss today the point which we are discussing, infrastructure and construction sector. There are many things. Full day is being planned and there are two technical sessions, one after another, pre-lunch and post-lunch. My objective is that I need to sensitize the issue of construction and works contract. If you look at construction and works contract, quite common for infrastructure, whether it's support, power, road, whatever may be. If you look at works contract per se, it's disputed from day one. And there's no clarity that this dispute will get over post-GST regime as well. And I'm going to touch those points as well. You would be knowing that the works contract, both chargeable, VAT and service tax, unless otherwise exempted either under state provision for VAT perspective or under service tax from central tax perspective. Today, if you look at from state perspective, we got three mechanisms. A works contract can be divided actual material and actual labor, material portion chargeable to VAT and service portion chargeable to service tax. But we end up paying double taxes. For a contractor or builder or any entity undertaking construction project, it's very difficult to actually bifurcate material and labor. So either they have to follow a standard deduction method under VAT provision for labor deduction and under service tax provision either abatement or valuation mechanism. But let's take an example, 100 crore rupees project. If it cannot be divided actual material and actual labor, under VAT we have to follow standard deduction. They provide specified percentage towards the service portion. It varies from one state to another state. Then we pay VAT on, let's say 25% standard deduction given for service portion, we pay VAT on 75%. But the same analogy is not being picked up under service tax provision. If you are following abatement method, you have to pay service tax on 30% value with a condition value of land need to be included and no credit on input, meaning there were credit available on input service and capital goods. Either you follow Rule 2A valuation mechanism, pay 40% if it is original works. If it is not original works, 70%. With same condition, no credit on input, meaning thereby credit available on input service and capital goods. We end up paying double taxes. So we all are looking for whether our double taxes issue will get over post GST. This is very interesting and we have to really consider. But let me give you the brief background. Under service tax and under VAT, this dispute still persists whether works contract is an indivisible contract or divisible contract. What is indivisible? If you go to Apex Court judgment in the case of Dalim Industrial Company Limited, Honorable Apex Court has said it is indivisible contract, cannot be vivisected for chargeability of service tax. This judgment was followed by Larsen and Toubro judgment, but then overruled by larger bench judgment in the case of BSBK that works contract being indivisible contract can be vivisected and service tax can be levied. So works contract service per se got included for service tax chargeability from 1st June 2007. But still this case has gone to Honorable Apex Court. Dispute was whether service tax can be levied on works contract services prior to 1st June 2007, which recently Apex Court in the case of Larsen and Toubro has decided that if at all service tax applicable, then it is applicable on or after 1st June 2007 for works contract services. But again, from VAT perspective, you must be knowing Coney elevator judgment. What is the Coney elevator judgment? Dominant intention test. In works contract, what is my intention? Whether I am supplying goods or I am supplying services. Initially, in the case of Coney elevator, it was decided it is a supply of goods. But it was overruled by a higher number bench and saying that it is a works contract. If it's a works contract, then both VAT and service tax applicable, which was again being followed in the case of Larsen and Toubro. So this is what the dispute going on since day one. Let me take GST perspective and see whether we will get clarity or not. And I just take a clue from Ashish ji. He said GST भी कुछ मौसम की तरह है. कभी fog आते हैं, कभी fog चले जाते हैं. I'm telling you the works contract service definition in post GST. First of all, under GST, they say works contract service. Works contract, I will not say service. Works contract would be deemed as a supply of service. First clarity. They are saying that deemed supply of service. It is not supply of goods. So what is going to be applicable? The GST rate which is applicable on services going to be applicable on works contract. First component. Second component, what is the definition of works contract? The way definition is being defined, I'm again telling you, it will not provide certainty. And what is the definition of works contract? Definition says, works contract means a contract wherein we got transfer of property in goods used in execution of a contract. Please tell me, what is the relevance of transfer of property in goods post GST? Is a supply taxable event is? Supply of goods or services. Why you are saying transfer of property in goods? Again, you are contradicting with the basic thumb rule of GST. And after that, it continues to say it includes construction, erection, commissioning, installation, completion, fitting out, repair, maintenance, renovation, alteration of. The earlier definition was of movable and immovable property. Now they have deleted movable property. It is only for immovable property. Please tell me if you are getting repair of your car. Therein require material and you require service portion, whether it is not works contract. I'm just sensitizing the issue to all of you. The definition is now restricted. These 10 terms only related to immovable property, not with movable property. So please tell me, if you're going for repairing of your car, the service center going to apply the raw material component and then do servicing portion also? It's a works contract. But looking at the works contract definition in GST, revised model GST law, which has come on public domain on 26th of November 2016, they have done away with the movable property. So within the definition, two important line items. What is the relevance of transfer of property in goods? When taxable event is supply of goods and services, you are not considering manufacturing, rendering of service or sale of goods is a supply. But again, definition says transfer of property. Who is going to judge that? First part. And second part, what happened for construction, erection, commissioning, installation, completion, fitting out, repair, maintenance, renovation, alteration of movable property? Is it not works contract? Then again, I'm taking it further. They have given two broad definitions. Composite supply and mixed supply. New terms in revised model GST law. And what is composite supply? Naturally bundled. Naturally, you have seen 66F subsection 3 in Finance Act provision. Naturally bundled and not naturally bundled. If it is naturally bundled, then principal supply, whatever rate applicable, going to be applicable. So take same example, repair of car. You are supplying component also, you are supplying services also. Now in this case, there is a composite supply happening. What is the GST rate applicable, whether on supply of goods or supply of services? It is not works contract now. So you have to identify what is the principal supply, whether the service is the principal supply or component is the principal supply. First component. Mixed supply, not naturally bundled. Not naturally bundled means maybe GST rate, which is not yet decided for service taxability. They are talking about 18% rate, right? But let's say component chargeable to 28%. Not naturally bundled. Then highest of the rate would be applicable, 28%. Just imagine those situations are just coming before us. Go to the valuation. it was big issue. What would be the valuation for chargeability of GST? Provision says transaction value paid by recipient to a supplier, and price is the sole consideration, and they are not related. That is the thumb rule. But the big issue was in the first model GST law, they have included FOC supplies of material and services, or any kind of reduced price charged by recipient supplying goods and services to a supplier need to be included. We all are struggling with whether FOC material provided by contractee to the contractor need to be included for service tax chargeability. Prior to 1st July 2012, we got larger bench judgment, Bayana Builders. So we all are relieved of. Post 1st July 2012, Rule 2A, it includes, and even the abatement notification includes, FOC supplies need to be included for service tax chargeability. What happened post GST? Laudable one. PSG Chamber of Commerce, I can say from IDT committee perspective, being chairman of IDT committee, we have suggested if you include FOC supply in gross consideration in the hands of supplier, it would be double taxation. Recipient might have paid GST on procurement of material, which is supplying FOC to the supplier. If supplier again included, it would be double. Am I clear to all of you? Double taxation. We say it should not be the case. Recipient has paid the GST liability. Why again need to be included? Laudable one. Valuation provision got corrected. And now they are saying supplier need not include FOC supplies made by contractee recipient to a contractor to a supplier. Laudable change. But again, next question comes, at what rate service is going to be taxable post GST, and particularly construction and works contract. Today you may be paying 30% or 15% under abatement notification service tax, 4.5%, or you may be paying 40% or 15%, which is 6% under valuation rule. Or under VAT provision, either you are following standard deduction method or composition method. Actually, it's quite difficult task. So approximately we would be paying around 10%, 11% depending on the option chosen by you. Composition method, you know, there are lesser rate, concessional rate, which is being prescribed, vary from one state to another state with a condition no credit on input, and you cannot charge on your output supply, right? What happened post GST? You are paying only 10, 11%. If GST rate decided 18% and works contract is the supply of service, it is going to increase the pricing for all of us together. First biggest, because supply of service. So I'm just thinking, the value of land, take any building construction contract. 30% or 15% applicable with a condition value of land need to be included. But in valuation rule, they are not talking about deduction of land value, and which is a major cost in any construction contract. They are not talking about. So am I going to charge 18% with no deduction on value of land? What will happen? Look at the component. Are you getting my point? Hope I'm clear to all of you. This is the valuation part. Just move to time of supply, point of taxation. Forward charge and reverse charge. We all know, because we are dealing with service tax provision, so we all know. Forward charge means supplier has to charge GST, right? What would be POT for him? Now they have replicated point of taxation provision rule 3 for forward charge, and rule 7 reverse charge POT for reverse charge in GST. But just to highlight and to tell you, all of you, when supplier need to charge GST, POT would be earliest of the following: date of issuance of invoice, or last date when invoice need to be raised. So what is this relevant last date when invoice need to be raised? Then you have to go back to your contract and you have to identify milestone defined in the contract. If that milestone is being achieved, then within 30 days you have to raise the invoice. Otherwise, this milestone would be the POT. Or date of receipt of money, whichever is earlier. So advance money received, service tax applicable, but VAT is not applicable. But post GST, even advance money received, CGST, and SGST both applicable for intrastate supply and IGST for interstate supply. So this change is coming up. Now next, what is the receipt of money? Receipt of money, again, very well they have defined. They have said either you are booking in your books of accounts that you received the money, but check is lying in your drawer. Or you have collected the check, but you have not recorded in your books of accounts. Then date of credit in your bank account. So you can't hide. Either the entry in the books of accounts or credit in the bank statement, whichever is earlier, would be considered date of receipt of money. This is a forward charge. Why I am highlighting all this thing? Because these are going to change our way to do business post GST. Right? Reverse charge. What is reverse charge? Under, for works contract, there are two kind of things. Partial reverse charge, 50-50, provided by individual, firm, HUF, AOP to a body corporate. Partial reverse charge relevance is not there in model GST law. Will not be there. Either it has to be paid by supplier or it has to be paid by recipient as notified. If works contract notified under reverse charge, then only recipient will pay. Otherwise, normally liability is on supplier. What is reverse charge POT? Just to highlight, I am going to tell you, if you look at Rule 7 of POT rules, it says date of payment. Provided payment made within 3 months from the date of invoice. If payment is not made within 3 months from date of invoice, then the date following the end of 3 months would be the POT. Are you recalling? This 3 months is reduced to 2 months now. So whether this is improvement, now you can see payment has to be made within 2 months. If it is not made within 2 months, then the date following the end of 3 months would be the POT. If you cannot identify these two activities, then date of entry in the books of recipient would be the POT for reverse charge liability. This is what the provision in revised model GST law. So I'm just highlighting, if you're associated enterprises, related person, then date of debit or date of payment, whichever is earlier. So all these changes you need to club together for way forward. But I'm going to tell you some of the important things at the end of my theme presentation, which would be very eye-opener for all of us together today here. I can say I'm betting with all of you. Go along with me, place of supply now. What is place of supply? Let's say you got a contract for 100 crore. And you have to do road construction in 4 states. 4 states, right? Under service tax, you take centralized registration, right? You need not require to go state-wise. Do you require to go state-wise? Just say yes or no. Do we go for state-wise registration under service tax? We don't go. But post GST, we have to take registration from the state where from we are supplying goods and services. So what happened? We have to move from centralized to decentralized. Meaning thereby, if you are undertaking construction project in 4 states, you may have taken centralized registration in Delhi, but post GST, you have to go in 4 states and take registration because place of supply would be location of immovable property. Place of supply provision says location of immovable property, meaning thereby you are supplying services from that state, you have to take registration. So what happened? A contract 100 crore rupees you are undertaking prior to GST. Post GST, if you want to continue in those states, you have to take registration. And there are certain other related points. Let me create another example for you. What is the thumb rule for intrastate and interstate? Intrastate means within state, interstate means one state to another state. For intrastate, what is applicable? CGST and SGST. For interstate, what is applicable? IGST. Let's say you misjudge a transaction. You treat some transaction which was initially interstate transaction, but you took a decision it's an intrastate transaction. You might have charged CGST and SGST, but after 3 years, 4 years, it turned out to be an interstate transaction, IGST applicable. Then what happened? Then you might have collected CGST and SGST, deposited CGST and SGST. Department will come and they will say, it's interstate. You should have charged IGST. What happened? Then question comes, can I adjust CGST and SGST towards payment of IGST? Answer is big no. They say you have to pay IGST. And initial law was saying you have to pay IGST along with interest. laudable one. At least IDT committee of PSG Chamber of Commerce has suggested, sir, if there is wrong perception for treatment of transaction, intrastate or interstate, you should not charge interest. I have paid CGST and SGST. Might be I have taken a missed call. So you should not charge interest. I will pay again IGST. Then what they're saying, pay IGST and go for refund of CGST and SGST. And we all know how refund comes. We all know how refund comes. So for us, it's a determining, we have to determine whether my transaction is intrastate or interstate. Thumb rule provided. What is the thumb rule for intrastate transaction? Location of supplier and place of supply is in same state. And what is interstate transaction? Location of supplier and place of supply is in different state. But what is location of supplier? Again, they are given 4 parameters. The place of your registration, or fixed establishment, or establishment most directly concerned, or usual place of residence. So you can't assume that only place of registration would be your location of supplier. There may be a fixed establishment, project site, where engineers are sitting. They are undertaking. What is fixed establishment? Which is characterized by sufficient degree of permanence of human and technical resources. Even though that is not registered, but that would be location of supplier. So I'm only saying these are the things important one from all perspectives. So place of supply, this we need to be careful about. Let me touch upon transitional provision, and very important for all of us. You are, let's say, service tax registered and VAT registered today. You may have SANVAT credit and VAT credit. You'd be thinking what happened post GST, right? Whether my SANVAT would be carried forward post GST, VAT would be carried forward. At least provision says SANVAT would be CGST and VAT would be SGST. But let's imagine a situation, you have centralized registered unit under service tax. You got 10 locations across India. You have taken centralized registration only in Delhi. So your SANVAT is standing only in Delhi. You have not bifurcated state-wise. But post GST you have to take registration state-wise. Please tell me how this SANVAT would be distributed. What is the parameter? Are you getting this point? At least this point also IDT committee has raised, since our senior vice president and chairman of other infrastructure and construction committee is there. At least proactively we have suggested to the government. And what now provision says that now we can distribute the SANVAT credit to any of the unit wherever we want. So good and laudable change. But what happened? You should not do keeping eyes closed. Why you should not do it? Let me bring an example. Let's say you got 10 location. You can transfer to any X location. But my advice to all of you would be, you should be transferring this credit to a state where you got maximum output. But let me give you one more example. What is this relevance of CGST and SGST? And then it would be more eye-opener for all of you. See, let's take an example. You are registered in Delhi. Your client, and I'm your chartered accountant. I'm also registered in Delhi. Now, there is one case coming up in Bombay High Court. You said, Mr. Jain, you go to Bombay High Court on our behalf and argue a case. Bimal Jain has gone to Bombay High Court, but stayed in a Le Méridien hotel in Mumbai. So Le Méridien hotel is going to charge GST to Bimal Jain for staying in Le Méridien hotel. Just for a sec, start thinking. Le Méridien hotel invoicing to Bimal Jain. For Le Méridien hotel is an intrastate transaction or interstate transaction? Intra, right? Because location of supplier Maharashtra and place of supply, location of immovable property Maharashtra. So Le Méridien is going to charge CGST and Maharashtra SGST. Am I right? What Bimal Jain will do with Maharashtra SGST? Cost. Because I am not registered in Maharashtra. Otherwise I have to take ISD registration in Maharashtra to distribute the credit. Are you getting my point? What happened to CGST? CGST is central levy, right? Can you transfer the CGST in Delhi registration number? Can you transfer? You cannot transfer. The government, the way they have drafted the law, they are saying even CGST would be state specific. How could be? What is the relevance of the central levy? I do understand Maharashtra SGST, the state specific, cannot be carried forward in Delhi registration, but CGST being a central levy, why you should not be allowing me? But law says it's a state specific. So they are making CGST and SGST state specific. Now take your example, any infrastructure and construction project, you might be purchasing raw material. Sometime it comes directly within the state, build to ship to model. Sometime E1, E2 cell model, you do all this transaction, right? And which is quite prominent. Why we do E1, E2 transaction? To safeguard CST, right? And why build to ship to? Just to save the time. Am I clear about it? So those model need to be looked into. Let's say if you are taking build to ship to model, and because of cross registration, if you are not registered in the respective state, then maybe tax liability, GST liability paid may not be available as a credit. So we have to look into those transactions. Come to the continuous contract. You got 100 crore rupees contract. That need to be continued for 3 years. You started recently April 2016. It will continue till April 2019. Please tell me, there would be two probable situations for you. One probable situation that of 100 crore rupees project, you may have received 50 crore rupees prior to April 1, 2017, assuming appointed date is April 1, 2017. Then what happened to that one? Service tax applicable on advance money received, but VAT is not applicable. Right? So what happened? Post GST, you may not require to pay service tax because you may have discharged the service tax liability which you are supposed to. If you have discharged, then you will not discharge CGST liability post GST. But VAT liability, you will pay post GST, and that would be rate would be supply of services. Maybe VAT chargeable today 4%, 5%. Standard deduction, composition method. Can you do tax planning? Are you getting my point? Try and start thinking. This is not only CGST, SGST and IGST. Lot many things in real estate and construction sector. If you start working today, I'm sure you will benefit it in terms of profitability. At least this profitability they are not talking about. They are talking about anti-profiteering. What is anti-profiteering they are talking about? That if you are available, any credit is available or any rate advantage is there, you should pass on the benefit to the consumer. Which at PSG Chamber of Commerce, we are saying this is very difficult to measure. And what should be the mechanism? Whether I have passed on this particular incidence to my consumer or not. And who would be judging? Designated authority, government authority. Are you going to Inspector Raj once again back? Are you giving open weapon in their hands whether I have passed on the benefit to consumer or not? Though it's a good one. We should pass on incidents to the consumer. But how it should be measured and who would be the empire who would be judging that? An empire always comes with the bias specs. Coming to the next component which may be very, very important for all of you, exemption. Service tax exemption is there, right? Under entry 12, 13 and 14 of mega exemption notification 25/2012. Just start thinking what will happen to those exemptions. Whether that will continue post GST. If continue post GST, then it will not be wide 25/2012. It would be wide GST exemption notification. So we have to, maybe today you have entered into a contract, you are enjoying service tax exemption, but tomorrow your exemption is dependent upon exemption notification issued under GST provision. You must be knowing that entry 12, initially they have withdrawn the exemption on construction of civil property given to government, local authority or governmental authority, right? Pertaining to construction, erection, commissioning, installation, completion, fitting out, repair, maintenance, renovation. Any educational, clinical, art or culture, residential complex, exemption was withdrawn. Even airport and port. And after 1 year, again, this exemption got reinstated. Reinstated with a condition that you have entered into a contract prior to 1st April 2015 and you have paid the stamp duty. Then it will continue up to 2020, right? It is service tax exemption which will continue 2020. Whether there is any exemption notification under GST which allow 2020 exemption. So even though you are doing road construction or airport and port, unless the corresponding exemption entry is being inserted, and if it is inserted, whether CGST, SGST both, no, only service tax, CGST, VAT we pay. Are you getting my point? Service tax means only CGST benefit they will allow, but VAT we pay. So maybe VAT exemption will not be there in the form of SGST, but do we have started making representation? This is my point. And this is what we have to understand. Because only understanding GST today, maybe we would be deliberating for 2 technical sessions, but you would be having specific issues pertaining to your industry, which may be port, infrastructure, road construction. Within infrastructure, we are talking about power. And power, we are talking about entry 53 list 2 item is not being touched upon. And probable assumption is that power sector would be out of GST. But power sector enjoy lot many exemption today. They can get the raw material and input services by specific exemption notification under excise and service tax. What happened tomorrow? Those transactions need to be looked into. There may be fixed price contract. You have entered 100 crore rupees contract, fixed price contract. With the government authority, always fixed price contract. Post GST, if GST applicable, who is going to bear that extra additional GST incidence? Do we have clause? I hope you got my point. And last and foremost, which I will touch upon, GST input tax credit. GST input tax credit. See, there was an initial first model GST law which says, I got 100 crore rupees contract. I am subcontracting 50 crore rupees contract to Sri Anilji. Now, Sri Anilji is charging service tax today to Bimal Jain. Credit is available in the hands of Bimal Jain. Credit is being denied only on input. Right? Credit is available in the hands of Bimal Jain. But Bimal Jain giving services to end customer, which is Anilji as on date, he cannot take credit. He cannot take credit. But Bimal Jain can avail credit of service tax charged by Anil Khitanji. Right? This provision was very dicey, the way they have drafted the provision. But now they have corrected this provision. They are saying GST charged by a subcontractor to a main contractor, credit would be available except construction of immovable property. Means SUSA will not be able to take credit on construction of immovable property except plant and machinery. But plant and machinery are again restricted to telecom tower and pipeline and certain equipment and apparatus. But GST input tax credit, what additionally we do from ITC committee perspective, initially provision was input and input services used directly for provision of outward supply. This was the provision. But at least now they have made the changes. Laudable change. They are talking about in the course of furtherance of business. No direct correlation required. If it is in the course of furtherance of business, credit would be available. So my submission to each one of you would be here today that since you are going to sit down for full day, there will be technical presentation by number of learned speakers. Just try to improvise. Don't look at GST as a theoretical topic. You got number of ramifications which you have to start now. If you don't start now, that may hit back in terms of pricing, costing and profitability. I given lot many inputs which is very much eye-opener. I hope you all will agree with me. And let me sum up my presentation with 2 and 3 more tagline words. What is those important tagline which I want to give it to all of you? See, construction, real estate, infrastructure, port project is a very much required for infrastructure growth and development. Am I right? Country is needing for that. Country need affordable housing. These exemptions must continue even post GST. There may be existing contract, there may be new contract post GST regime. So we have to identify what all, let's say power sector. I'm picking up NTPC and NHPC. I'm just naming for the name's sake. But we are saying power for all by 2020. How power for all unless you provide a similar exemption for procurement of raw material input services? If the output is not chargeable and that made taxable, then price will increase. So we require that kind of exemption continue even post GST for power sector. But power sector again saying that why we should be out? Let GST applicable so that we can get the credit available to us. Come to the petroleum. Petroleum is out, right? Petroleum is out, but petroleum is the raw material feed for our sector. Petroleum will continue with the existing central excise duty and VAT, of which credit will not be available. But on your output, may be GST applicable. Look at that cascading. So valuation provision again says all other taxes except CGST, SGST and IGST, you need to include in your valuation. So if you are paying any kind of excise and VAT on petroleum product, which is a feedstock, raw material for your output supply, it need to be included in valuations. First, you are paying no credit available. And second, it need to be included in valuation for chargeability of, look at that component cascading. There are many things we have to really geared up for our power, road, infrastructure and construction contract. My objective was just to highlight and sensitize all pertinent issue. I just picked up the topic of GST. I have not discussed adjudication. I have not discussed power to issue so-called notice. Yesterday I was talking to our PSD president, Gopalji, and he was interacting with the media. He asked, Bimal, can you please give me some of the bullet point which I can interact with media? And even we had a meeting with Revenue Secretary on 17th of November probably, right? In that meeting, I raised one important point, and I'm just giving you how the thing started. One point was that GST credit and return is very automized mechanism. We have to file outward supply by 10th of next month. Inward supply would be auto-populated by 15th of next month, consolidated by 20th of next month. I raised a question last year. They have increased the time limit for issuance of so-called notice under service tax from 18 months to 30 months, under excise and custom from 1 year to 2 years. I really put up PSD Chamber of Commerce perspective. I said, sir, when we are automized, we are electronically filing return, why you are increasing this time period? Do you want government departments to continue to be inefficient? If you are electronically filing, and my electronic filing is the subject matter of credit availment and ITC matching and mismatching, why you are raising 3 years in post-GST law? This period would be 3 years in post-GST law, and that too from due date of annual return filing. And due date of annual return is 31st December. So 16-17 return need to be filed by 31st December 2017, and 3 years would be calculated from 31st December 2000. Not only 3 years, look at the time period, and that too for non-fraud cases. So let me sum up my presentation, and then we can open up this floor for open query and answer. But I thought I need to sensitize all the issue which would be important for all of you to really take it further during the day deliberation by all learned speakers. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Good morning once again.